are you? Hope all is well with you and your loved ones. Recently, a friend of mine, who is 52, confident, full of life, was at a small gathering when a woman in her late 30s called her auntie. She froze, not because she was offended, but because suddenly she realized that's how the world sees her now. And just like that, something shifted in the room. On the surface, it might sound harmless, even affectionate, but my friend told me she felt uncomfortable, even a little old. She smiled politely, but later she told me, while she's not sure how the woman intended it to sound, she did not like how it made her feel. Not respected, not seen, just quietly placed in a category she didn't ask to join. It made her wonder, when is it appropriate for someone to call a woman auntie? And who gets to do that? That simple moment opens up a much bigger conversation about how language shapes our identity, especially at midlife. In many cultures, calling someone auntie is a gesture of respect. In African, Caribbean, South Asian, and Pacific Islander traditions, it means you're part of my extended family. You've earned honor, familiarity, and warmth. In those contexts, being called auntie means you're trusted, you're respected, you belong. But outside those settings, especially when the person saying it is only a few years younger, it can feel different. You're not their family. You're not asking to be placed in a nurturing role. You're just living your life. And suddenly, someone draws a line between their youth and your age. So while it's cultural for some, for others, it's emotional. It stirs a quiet awareness that the world may no longer see you as peer, equal, or even visible. For many women over 50, being called auntie hits the same nerve as being told to age gracefully. It sounds polite, but beneath it is a script that says you're no longer in the center. Step aside quietly and do it with a smile. For some, it's not even about the word itself. It's about what it signals, that you've moved from woman to caretaker, from participant to background. In parts of the American South, you still hear children call unrelated adults aunt or uncle as a sign of politeness. It's woven into the social fabric. But as cultures mingle and younger generations adopt these terms in new ways, the meaning can shift. What feels warm in Lagos or Kingston may feel jarring in Los Angeles or London, especially when it's coming from a peer, a stranger, or someone only a few years younger. That's why some women embrace auntie as a badge of community and others bristle at it. Same word, different context, very different impact. Think about it. Men of the same age are often called sir, boss. Those titles imply status and authority. But for women, auntie tends to strip away power, sexuality, and individuality. It boxes you into warmth but not relevance. That's not respect. That's gentle erasure. Social psychologists call this benevolent ageism. It's discrimination wrapped in politeness. Well-intentioned behaviors that still reinforce stereotypes about older people. Being called auntie can feel like that. It's meant as respect, but it also quietly marks you as older, nurturing, or non-sexual, whether or not you see yourself that way. Labels act like mirrors. They don't just reflect how others see us, they shape how we see ourselves. When someone calls you auntie at 50, you might suddenly feel 70, even if you felt 35 a moment before. That stereotype threat in action. And when we hear those labels often enough, we start to internalize them. Suddenly, you find yourself editing your wardrobe, adjusting your tone, hesitating before doing something bold because the world has quietly told you, you're auntie now. That's the subtle power of labels. They don't just describe us, they define the space we're allowed to occupy. What happens inside when we hear a label like this? Midlife is already a time of identity transition, kids growing up, careers may be plateauing, bodies changing. Many women still feel youthful inside, but society starts categorizing them as older. That disconnect between self-image and public image can sting. One day you're just you, the next you're Aunty. Psychologists call this role exit and role acquisition. You're leaving certain roles behind and entering new ones, sometimes without consent. The words people use act as signposts for those shifts. But here's the empowering part. You can choose your response. Some women embrace the mentor identity. If I'm Aunty, I'm a powerful auntie who sets boundaries. Others use humor to diffuse it. Some simply correct it. The key is that it's your choice. Respect doesn't require diminishment. So how can you tell the difference? If the person calling you auntie is a child or someone from a culture where it's an ingrained sign of respect, there's no harm meant. But when the speaker is a peer or only a few years younger, context matters. In workplaces or social settings, it's courteous to ask, "What would you like me to call you?" The same way we ask about pronouns, we can ask about honorifics, and it's perfectly okay to say, "Just call me by my name." You get to decide your title. You get to define your presence. Don't let anyone name you out of your own narrative. You can be kind. You can be respected. You can be anti-energy if you want, but it should always be your choice. And for younger women watching, here's a simple guide. If you're unsure what to call someone, ask. It's perfectly okay to say, "What would you like me to call you?" Respect isn't about guessing someone's age. It's about honoring their personhood. In a multicultural society, intergenerational etiquette is part of empathy. It helps avoid micro-ageism and fosters genuine respect. So, back to my friend's question. When is it appropriate for others to call women auntie, and who should have the right to do that? The answer isn't a single rule. It's about context, culture, and consent. For some, it's a warm embrace. For others, it's an unwanted label. The bigger point is that language matters. Titles shape how we're seen and how we see ourselves. At midlife, when identity is already shifting, one word can feel heavier than it looks. But awareness gives us choice. We can educate, correct, reframe, or even reclaim these labels as signs of power and mentorship rather than decline. While this may have been my friend's first encounter with language that signals she's entered a new stage of womanhood, it won't be her last. For many women, that moment, that first time you're called auntie or treated as someone older, is like a quiet initiation into how society now expects you to move through the world. Your introduction to being seen as an older woman might come in different ways. Maybe it's the expectation to care for everyone before yourself, or the assumption that your most exciting years are behind you. Maybe it's noticing you're praised more for patience than for ambition, or that your competence is read as helpfulness rather than authority. Whatever the form, it's the same underlying message that as we age, we're supposed to shift from center stage to support act, and we're expected to carry that transition with little pushback. But for many of us, shaking off labels put on us in our youth has been lifelong work. It's almost poetic, isn't it? From the moment we're girls, society has tried to name us, to decide who we are, how we should behave, and what version of womanhood we're allowed to occupy. Every stage comes with a new title, a new script to follow. First, it's fast or mature for your age, then it's strong woman, career girl, or supermom. And just when you finally learn to stand in your own definition, a new one appears. Auntie, ma'am, woman of a certain age. You see, society has a rather strange relationship with aging. The language attached to women's years rarely celebrates evolution. It often signals containment. It tells us we can grow older, but only within certain boundaries, gracious, selfless, supportive, never self-assured, or unapologetically visible. And that's where the tension lives, between who we know ourselves to be and who the world quietly expects us to become. The need to label and box in older women is so widespread that even women do it to each other. It's become part of our social conditioning, almost invisible in how naturally it happens. So when someone calls you auntie, maybe you smile, maybe you correct them, or maybe you reclaim it entirely. The point is, you decide what it means. And remember, this isn't about being oversensitive. It's about being self-aware. It's about understanding that words shape energy, and energy shapes identity. We can accept respect without inheriting limitation. So, if you've ever been called auntie, ma'am, or any title that made you pause, I invite you to think about what story that word tried to write for you, and whether you're still willing to let it. Because every time we define ourselves on our own terms, we make space for the next woman to do the same. Thanks so much for watching and providing space to grow, while I, too, continue on this journey. Hope to chat with you on the next one.
Hello from Amsterdam. It's rainy